Hey, Phil.
Hey, Jen.
What are you listening to this week? Welcome to Season 7 of What Are You Listening To? The weekly podcast created to foster community through music by sharing the stories behind the songs that soundtrack our lives. Some of the songs are old, some new, all good. I'm Jenn Tully, and this week I'm joined by Phil Matarese. Phil is one of the co hosts, also known as a complainer, on one of my favorite podcasts, 1001 Album Complaints. For those of you who haven't listened, 1001 Album Complaints is a weekly podcast where a group of longtime musicians and friends discuss albums from the book 1001 Albums You Must Hear Before You Die. The hosts review each album with a blend of humor, research, and musical insight, ultimately answering the question, should you though? This week, we're focusing on one of Phil's musical projects called Stay Puft, a Ghostbusters concept album. Stay Puft is the latest release from The Chop, and I think it is so great. Phil is here to tell us about how it came into being and walk us through a 4-song playlist that features some of our favorite songs from the album. So this week, all 4 songs are from Stay Puft by The Chop. Not familiar with The Chop? Tune into our conversation to learn more. And since our song picks might be new to you, we'll publish a playlist with the episode so you don't miss a beat. With that, let's get started. Phil, let's talk about Stay Puft.
Hey, Jen. Yeah, let's do it. Let's dive in.
I'm so excited. So the first thing I want to do before we get into like the actual songs is for listeners that aren't familiar, tell us at least how you guys define it, like a concept album. What does a
Yeah,
concept album
yeah,
mean to you?
yeah, sure. This is ultimately a album about the Ghostbusters story, right?
Yes.
Like the story we all know that's been like reprised in movies and skit comedy. Yeah, and it the story is played pretty straight, right? From
Yeah.
the characters to the interaction between like the supernatural and science. Obviously, we like have fun with it. Obviously, it's satirical. But yeah, also it's a pretty, pretty linear telling of the story you already know.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I want to know how you guys how do you land on a concept? Because
Yeah,
correct
yeah,
me if I'm wrong, but I
sure,
believe your album before this or the concept album before this was called Ghost Beef and it was
sure,
an
sure.
Arby's concept album. Is that
Sure.
right?
Yeah. So yeah, great question. Yeah. Yeah. So usually someone is the driving force, right?
Okay.
Behind Tom was definitely the driving force behind the Arby's metal record. This and if I'm gonna be honest, I feel like Rob and Tom were the driving forces behind this, with one major caveat. I feel like years ago I was always joking about like, oh, we've got to do Ghostbusters the musical. Like, but that was the whole idea. That was literally
Okay.
everything I had. I was sort of just riding on the listener's imagination, playing out from there. And at some point, probably in 2007, we cut a couple of these songs, and kind of decided we didn't have something compelling, right?
Huh.
We didn't have something.
Okay.
And we wound up sitting on it for a while and writing more material and asking ourselves like, why isn't this funny or good, right? Like it's kind of missing both marks. And we wound up picking it up post COVID. I mean, in this case, I think it was just like it's the fun and the challenge of like a new style, and it's
Okay.
also, I don't know, like you get a little older, it's like you're just looking for something you can all like galvanize behind, no matter how like silly it is. And so an idea like this, like almost like a downstream from like Weird Al, right? Is like just easy to like get people on the same page for because it's like silly and fun and like It's almost like a Christmas record or something.
It's so much cooler though. Like I don't want people to think it's like a Weird Al like parody album
Oh
because
yeah, fair. Yeah, very fair.
it's so much cooler to me in that it's the way you know, and you see this often, right? You see these films that have been taken to Broadway, right? Like Mean Girls or The Outsiders or like there doesn't seem to be any like Lion King, any specific criteria that makes a movie like Broadway worthy. And so I loved seeing Ghostbusters get this treatment, right?
Oh
Because
yeah,
I could
sure. Yeah,
now
yeah, yeah.
imagine this as like a stage play, you know,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that's
no,
what
totally,
it did for
totally.
me going through all of this. And so I love it. I think it's so smart. I think anybody that's a fan, especially of the original, because you guys kind of focus exclusively on like the 1984 version. You're not bringing any weird shit
No,
from
that's
Ghostbusters
that's
2 or
that
like
there are some Ghostbusters 2
that.
references,
Well,
but
actually, when we get to Janine, yeah.
yeah, yeah, sure. But you're absolutely right. Like it is very much focused on the original film. And the story, yeah, none of like the afterlife is being brought in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, whatever for people
yeah,
that like that. But for me, there is one Ghostbusters and it will always be the
yeah.
1984
I
version.
agree, and I agree with you wholeheartedly.
um, okay, now I have like some questions. We're about to get into the music, folks, I promise. But I have one more question. I want to know about the rules. Like, what are the rules when you guys are sitting down to this? Is it like, okay, everybody gets to pick a character or a scene or a line? Or is it like, first off, how do you
Yeah,
go about like
yeah.
deciding what you're going to focus on?
I
And
mean,
then I have a follow up question.
in this case, in this case again, it was like we sort of recorded this in two halves, right?
Okay.
And the
Yep.
first part I think was a little less intentional. So we just wrote a whole bunch of stuff. Ready to Believe and Janine were a part of that mix, as were Tools the Talent, um, with another song that we didn't release, and The Traveler. But also, like at that time, like we definitely had songs like Walter and Lewis Tully, sort of like in development. They just they didn't get finished. Like we didn't even have something to record. We were like, oh, like I remember Lewis Tully. Like we had a verse and like the musical bridge. We had like a key change, but it was very clearly like missing something. So there, in the first go round, we recorded a bunch of stuff, but we could see that it sort of like lacked a story or like nothing. It just didn't work yet, you know.
Okay.
And I think in the second go round, there was a little more thought about like how do we tell a little more linear of a story, right? So that's where I think some things like Keymaster or Ain't No God were written like very specifically, like made to order sort of tunes, or there was a
Okay.
very specific thing we had to accomplish with the song. Whereas a lot of the other songs I think were written a little more organically, in that like we sort of just picked moments we really liked and and just like goofed off with them.
Well, my follow-up question is this then. Like, do you set hard and fast rules like, okay, we can't use Who You Gonna Call and we can't
Yeah,
use I'm Afraid of No Ghost. Like
yeah, there were,
you're
yeah.
out if you say that.
Yeah, we definitely did have some lines, like some of the obvious stock lines we didn't want to use. There's that sort of classic Ghostbusters riff that
Yep.
we didn't want to use. We even talked about different ways of using them, sort of obscured, abstracted ways. And we decided, like, no, this just isn't that cool. Like, just the thing is telling this is Ghostbusters enough. Like,
Right.
doesn't need any more.
There's no ambiguity about what it's about. Right.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay, now we're going to get into the actual songs because I could like pick your brain all day. It feels like when I was thinking about these questions and I was so curious about the process, it almost felt like, like improv, right? Where you have rules that you have to engage with in order to make it work for everybody. And I was like, there has to be some sort of like parameters or boundaries that they have to stay within in order to make something like this work.
It's like, we've definitely all known each other for a long time. And maybe in that way, there are some rules that, we know, but they're not official. Right, like they're not physically etched in stone, but I do agree that there was a lot of conversation around things that were too obvious or too weird, and really just trying to like find the sweet spot that makes it like fun and approachable.
Yeah, I think you landed in it. I think you did because it really could have been overproduced. And I remember upon first listen, I was like, there were things I was expecting. And so in the beginning, I was kind of like, wait, why didn't they do this? And then the more I listened to it, it's for the exact reason that you said. I'm like, because it would have been overkill. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
when I first listened, I thought like, oh, maybe it's going to be like a spooky intro. You know, I think that the original Ghostbusters was kind of the first one to put that sound effect over the Columbia logo. You know,
Yeah,
before you
yeah,
even get
yeah.
into the movie,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
you're about to watch something spooky, right? And so I thought like, oh, I wonder if there's going to be that. And when there wasn't, I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then, like you said, the more you get into it, it tells the whole story. By the time you're at the end, you've listened to the movie. And so I was like, now I understand the choices, because I think it would have just been too much, or it would have felt gimmicky. And so I love that there aren't any like sound bites. There aren't any,
Yeah,
you know, clips from the movie. And
yeah.
one of the tracks, we'll get into that a little bit more specifically, but I found it really refreshing that it was all original material,
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
all of it.
And those are definitely you're alluded like definitely we talked about sound bites or recording certain conversations, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
dialogue to have in there. And in the
Yep.
end, we were just like, nah, like we should just do the music and like, that's like it makes more sense as like an original piece if it like stands that way. So
I
yeah, that's
totally
cool that
agree.
it's cool that you picked up on that because that was definitely a conversation that we
Yeah.
had and even some things we kind of like demoed in like workshopped in house and ultimately decided no on.
Well, I loved it. And so we're going to start with the first track on the album, which is a song called Ready to Believe. I think this is the perfect opening track. I know on 1001 Album Complaints, we talk about that a lot. Like every time I've joined you guys, I think we talk about the positioning, like first and last track, especially. But
Yeah.
this was the perfect first track, I think. It sets the tone. And I was so glad when I first saw the title, I was thinking, like, oh, this is going to be a play on the song Ghostbusters. You know, like there's going to be some sort of play on that. And when it was completely original and completely new. And I realized that it was referencing the commercial that they make
Yeah.
early on in the movie. You know, we're ready to believe you. I was like, yay. And I was so glad that you didn't name the song Ready to Believe You, because that would have given it away. It felt like a little surprise for me,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
That
yeah.
like Ready to Believe is certainly on theme and sets you up for what you're about to listen to, but it doesn't give it away. It doesn't give it away what part of the movie we're in or where we're kind of jumping in. And so I loved that. It felt like such an Easter egg, you know?
Yeah, yeah, no. This was one of the songs that we tracked in the first bundle of songs. Um, yeah, we went with it first because it sort of set. Well, obviously, we knew it had to be very early
Yeah.
in the album, right? There was like it was kind of first or second. That was the only places it could really work. And ultimately, like we just liked how upbeat it was. We liked the way it started with just drums and sort of like
Yep.
build up real fast, but in a different way. We liked the way all three of the voices that you'll hear on the record are present in the first song. So for a lot of, and we like the reference to the commercial and it just like it felt like the right level of it sort of lets the listener know like this is for like a real Ghostbusters super fan, not like a
Yep.
passive listener.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's so true though. And it was so packed with it. And it delivers exactly what you want. You know, I think
yeah,
when you are a super fan of something, you're like, oh, I don't want to be let down. If you are a super fan of Ghostbusters, you will not be let down. Like this, it delivered on all fronts. I'm going to keep saying that throughout the show, but I
yeah,
was
yeah,
just so happy that it didn't tarnish my image of one of my favorite movies. It actually gave me like a companion piece to go with it, you
yeah,
know?
yeah,
So
totally.
I
No, and
love
I
that.
mean, and also, I'm thinking about like all the decisions we made now too. When the other song we considered as the first track was Men of Science. And
Right.
ultimately, we sort of felt like it's kind of a soul record, right? Which is another
Yeah.
part of like the joke, right? Um, and we felt like Men of Science is like kind of like, with the exception of maybe Ain't No God, it's like the rockingest rock song on the record.
Yeah.
So we felt like it just set the wrong tone for the rest of the record. So like, and also we like the idea of like going more, right? Like you start at a place and then you go to more. So like
Yeah.
it kind of worked in that way.
And it gives you, I think you're right. It gives you a place to sort of jump off from that makes the rest of the album feel not, I don't want to say expected because every track was unexpected for me, but it makes it feel cohesive. I would
Mm-hmm.
say
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
a good way
yeah.
to phrase it. And it is I made a note here that it reminds me of like 60s like soul pop, but in like the vein of Weezer, right?
Yeah,
Like it's
yeah,
not
sure.
it's not a replica of the 60s
Yeah.
sound, but it's like influenced by and styled after,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's
We're
kind of
not.
how I think of like Weezer. Like they're not trying to recreate that genre. It's just like through their filter. That's what I
Yeah.
felt
Yeah.
about
No,
this.
I think that's a really good way of putting it. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the other thing that I noted about this song too is that at the end credits, of course, they play the Ghostbusters theme while the live action is still happening, and then you run into this very underappreciated song. I think before it goes into like the musical
Mhm.
interlude that you get throughout the movie, you get this great song called "Cleaning Up the Town" by the
Yeah.
Busboys.
I know the exact song you're talking
You know
about.
what I'm talking
Yeah.
about.
Definitely.
And
Definitely.
and that's what I felt like this was more in the vein of.
Yeah.
That's why
Yeah.
I'm
Uh
so
huh.
glad like Ray
Yes.
Parker Jr. isn't really even in the picture for this at
Yeah.
all. Like if
Yeah.
I was going to compare this to anything, I would compare it to that Busboys track that we get in the end credits. So I
Yeah,
love that
yeah.
too.
No, I totally know the track you're talking about, and I feel like if I was adding a cover song to this, to this playlist, like that's probably the one, right?
Yeah.
Like, you kind of need, you kind of goes between Lewis Tully and Tools and the Talent, doesn't it? Right? Like
Yes.
before they pick up Winston, but like, but anyway,
Yes.
yeah,
I
yeah,
love. I was like, that was the yes. If you were going to do a cover,
yeah,
that's the
yeah.
one that I want to hear. Not Ghostbusters, the
No,
Ray
no,
Parker
that's
Jr. I
silly.
want to hear cleaning up the town.
Yeah, that's silly. Yeah, I'm with you. I think we're on the same page.
All right. Our next track that we decided to focus on is one of my all time favorite film characters. Before I shared a last name with the gentleman, I have always loved Louis Tully. It's my favorite Rick Moranis character ever. Better than Spaceballs, better than Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, better than any of his days with Second City. Like I love Louis Tully. I think he's such a genius character. I love everything from his, after he transforms. Like one of my favorite scenes is when he's wearing the colander on his head,
Yeah,
when he's
yeah,
in
uh
the
huh.
offices after they capture him. And like he's got a colander with all the wires and stuff. And he's just so great. Like he's such a spaz. And then at the end, he wants to be interviewed, doesn't know where he is. Like I just think he's such an amazing character. Like the way Rick Moranis plays him, the costume design around Louis Tully. Have you ever seen better costuming on a
No,
character?
I agree. I think the Lewis character and his sort of interplay with Dana, and then how that like wraps up at the end is like it's ridiculous and it's an essential part of the movie. And I love what you're saying. Like Lewis's personality adds like an additional dimension to the movie,
Yes.
right? Like, yeah,
And he's this, he's like the Ghostbusters are all so cool, and then you have this character that's like the opposite of, and he's
yeah,
such a
yeah,
breath of
yeah,
fresh air in
yeah,
the
yeah,
middle of
yeah.
all of like Bill Murray as Venkman, like just doesn't get any cooler to me. Like I think I was 10 when the original came out. I saw it in the movie theater, and I can remember leaving the theater saying, I want to marry Bill Murray. Like that's my dream guy. That's the
Yeah,
dude
yeah.
for me. Like here, many years later. Perhaps he's turned out to be a bit problematic at times, but I will
Yes,
always
yes,
have a soft spot in my
yes,
heart
yes.
for Bill Murray's
I
portrayal.
definitely in a different. I was probably 6 years old, 7 years old when this movie came out, and I definitely remember in a different way thinking like, "Cool." So like that's what a cool guy is. Like I
Yeah.
need to fashion myself in this likeness.
After that,
Yeah, for
right?
sure. Yeah, it's
So I think that like Louis Tully plays so well, and this track again is called Louis Tully Central Park West, and I just think that it's like I don't know how you got inside his head to create this song for him, but it is so sweet and so endearing, just like the character. And I love the line, "Do I have a ghost of a chance with you?" Like this is one of those times where I feel like it was very deliberate, and you
yeah,
do allude to the source material as you should, but it's so strategic. It makes so much sense. It doesn't feel forced. And I love the harmonies during that part. You guys do such beautiful harmonies
yeah,
during
yeah,
that
yeah.
song.
No, thank you. Yeah, so this is. I also agree. I think this is a sort of. This is the quirky song. It has its own personality compared to the other songs. It's definitely like in a weird key, and then has a weird key change, which is like kind of again different than all the other tunes. This is one of the ones that we had a demo for in the first working session. But the part you just talked about, the chorus, right? Like, do I have a ghost of a chance? That's the part we didn't have yet, right? So we were like
Mm.
kind of kicking it around, and in so many ways it turned out better that we didn't have it. Yeah, just for a lot of reasons. But yeah, the addition of that part, it was sort of immediately like, okay, cool. Like now we have a song, right? And it was very obvious where it went from there. It was very obvious that like, oh, when we do the chorus the second time, we're going to be like higher, and that's cool now too. And some of these aren't like Ghostbusters jokes; they're just like musical choices, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know. So yeah. So I do think this is a very charming and sweet song in some ways. Ooh, this also has the introduction of like the monster voice, right? Which is something we talked about, and like the
Okay.
idea that the monster voice is like when the supernatural is directly interacting with a real world character or with the listener. So yeah, so that was also something we changed the second verse so it could be monster voice.
Okay, I get that now. That was one thing that did not click for me. I'm like, I felt like so many things clicked, and that was one that
Yeah,
I did
yeah.
not pick up on. So again, I love that. I love that there's still more for me to get into here, like the more I listen. Um, and then we moved on down. Well, actually, before I move on to our next track, which is another one of my favorites on the album, did you guys at some point have like did you write character songs for each character, or did you just like if like you know what? There's no song about Venkman per se. Like,
Not per se, right? So Ready to Believe was definitely just like written, as part of the initial batch. Looking Right at Me was sort of written after
oh
that scene,
yeah,
and it does sort of key in on Ray and
it
Peter
does.
in a unique way. So Lewis Tully, we already existed. Walter sort of fits the profile of Lewis
So
Tully.
good.
Like we wrote it early, it wasn't really there yet. Janine. So it feels like to me, looking it over now, a lot of the character pieces were written in the first round. So I
Okay.
think whether they were finished or not, I am looking at it now, thinking back. I feel like when we all went to our separate corners to write songs or portions of songs to collaborate on, we all wrote character pieces, right? And then when we came back to work on it a second time, we finished some of those character pieces. Men of Science is maybe an Egon song. Janine is also kind of an Egon song,
Yeah.
and I think we filled in some gaps from there.
Well, and I like that it's not. I think it would have been really easy. I mean, not that it's easy to write an album at all, but I think it would have been, it would have almost felt like a cop out had it just been like all character
Yeah.
songs. So I like that they're actually action songs too. That's what I was calling them. I was separating them out into character songs and action songs that, like you said, kind of move the plot along and kind of
Yeah.
like
Action
put you
songs.
forward. Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
yeah. No, I think
but
it's
like they put you forward in the story. They're like
yeah.
moving you ahead instead of just like meet this character, meet this character, meet this character. So I did love that we had like these character like micro studies in there, but
Uh-huh.
in the end, like everything is to serve the story moving forward. All right. Our next track on the playlist is, again, another favorite of mine on here. These last two actually are two that I love so much. But this one is called Only Zuul. And again, if you're a fan of the movie, you know immediately what this means. You know where this falls in the movie. And I was so, so grateful that this is the one where I was referencing earlier that I think it would have been so easy to throw a sound bite in here
Yep.
and might have worked. Like that's such a classic line, when
Mm-hmm.
she opens the door and there is no Dana,
Yeah.
only Zuul. Like I think that
And we definitely pulled the soundbite into the DAW and
it's
listened
so
to
good
it.
without it.
Yeah, like we definitely did that, right? But we ultimately chose not to do it, right? Like, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And I'm so glad you didn't. It just, again, it sounds like it's a standalone thing and it stands on its own 2 feet. And this one is almost like doo-wop esque,
Mm-hmm.
like it kind of get that doo-wop vibe in there. And I think that it's just like it stands on its own without any of the kooky production that could have been imported. And I was glad that you guys chose, even if it wasn't always that way. I was glad that the final version omitted a lot of that stuff.
No, I think that's really cool feedback. I think something that's unique about the record in general, like for me, because like I had this experience where like I worked on some of it and I didn't think about it for like 3 years. And then we all got back together and like finished it over another like 2 year period, right? Is that to me, the first 4 songs we tracked have a very like loose feel, right? They sound like this is people playing music. Whereas I think the songs we recorded in the second batch sound like a little more produced, a little more like studio polish. It's not dramatic, right? This being one of the songs that was recorded in the later batch that feels like a first batch song. So like to me, I think there's like some, like it's just a band playing. There isn't a lot of, other than the vocals, there aren't really any overdubs. Actually, this is a fun. So this song was recorded the day we recorded this. We had the drummer who worked on the second recording session, a guy named Steve Poltowski, a guy here in Delaware, great drummer. He was coming in to do a day with us. It was like the second of 3 days. So we had recorded only Zuul the day before to a click. The idea being there wouldn't be drums. Maybe there'd be like a tambourine or something. And when we had tracked the 2 or 3 songs that we had on the docket for the day, before Steve left, we were like, hey, why don't you just like do a take on this? Because we had done it to a click. And it was like one of those like behind the music moments. Where, like they just hit record and he just nailed it immediately. Like, I think he did 2 takes. I don't know which one we used. It doesn't matter. Like, it was just like, holy shit. Because like playing to a click is really difficult. And it's really difficult to do it and like make it sound like you're making music.
Right.
And it was just really, and I remember that being a really fun fun moment in the recording booth. Right. Well, by the time he gets to like the first chorus, everybody was being like, holy shit. Like, he's clearly going to do this. Like, yeah, so.
I can't imagine it without that. Honestly, I
the
can't.
drums are great. They kind of make the song, and they were kind of recorded last, which is like not the way you do it typically. And it definitely was a fun memory. I hadn't thought about that in a minute.
Yeah, I love this one. Well, then we sort of round out our focus track list here. The 4th song on our playlist for today is another fun character study about another kooky character from this film. There are so many, but this is a track called Janine, obviously written about the Annie Potts character that she plays so well. This character is, again, like right up there with Louis Tully in terms of just like nailing it as a performance. But I was curious, this is one thing that I did. I'm like, okay, so this is the song to me that felt like we kind of were pulling in maybe some of Ghostbusters 2, because their relationship, the Spengler, Janine, or Egon, Janine relationship isn't as fully developed in the first one as you find out later in the second one that it is. And so I wasn't sure if this was a song that was kind of from Spengler's perspective, or if we were pulling from the second Ghostbusters.
I've always thought this to be like sort of like from Egon to Janine. Yes.
Okay.
It also like this was the song from the first batch that like really stood out to me. Like I was playing in another band like back east at the time we recorded this out in California, and like we started doing this song. Like I just love this song. I think it's beautiful. Too. In its own way. Like, I think this sounds like people playing music, and I love that about it. And it has like little imperfections that kind of make it beautiful, right? And
love it.
and so this for me is kind of like the I don't know if that it's like the emotional high point of the record, but like of all the songs on the record, like this is the one that's most inclined to like give me a feeling in my body, the like, like the synesthesia feeling. Like it's the thing that's the one that's most inclined to like do that.
I love this one. I think it's such a sweet love song. And that's what I read. That was my note here, is that this is my favorite. This is my favorite from just a song perspective. Like if I'm just listening to a song and I'm forgetting that I love Ghostbusters and I'm forgetting this is a concept album, this is the one I want to listen to over and over again. I had Rob, one of your fellow complainers, on the show when the Beverly Crushers released Enterprise to talk about that album. And that, for those that don't know, that's a Star Trek Next Generation concept album. And they have a song on there called Space and Time that is the same. Like I listened to it outside of that, outside of any sort of fandom. I just love that song. That's what Janine is for me. Janine has landed on my playlist, my 2025 playlist that I build throughout the year, regardless of the rest of the album, because I love that song. And then plopping it into the album and letting Janine have a moment, and you get this sweet, like, what if relationship between the two of them. It was just like chef's kiss. This was one of my favorite moments in listening to the album, was getting to Janine.
Yeah, I also love this song. I played very little on this song, so I can like it's like I was always a listener.
Yeah.
And that was and it's still one of my favorite tracks on the record.
Yeah, I love it. I love whenever the line that says, "I don't know if I'm coming home. I'm facing the darkness all alone." Like,
Yeah,
it's just so
totally.
sweet. And we met and we parted in a song. It just feels like, and that's where it had me thinking. I'm like, is this Janine's fantasy? Like, is she maybe
Totally.
dreaming
Totally.
this? And
It does move in and out of like
yeah,
who's telling the
who is
story
this?
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked that. I really liked that so much. And then I have to request, like, when either the second album or the bonus tracks come out,
Yeah.
I have a line that has to be turned into a song. And I wonder if it's one that stuck out for you guys. I say this all the time, like, still to this day, however many years, 40 years later, it is not strange for me to walk by something and go, "And the flowers are still standing."
Totally. So if absolutely, if you look at the back cover, there's a little Easter egg just for you. So dig in there,
I was so happy. That's all I kept thinking the whole thing. I'm like, please reference "And the flowers are still standing." And for fans that are not familiar, there's an amazing scene in Ghostbusters when they're clearing out the ghost in the ballroom at the hotel for the very first time. And I'll just let you go back and re-enjoy that moment if it's not one that stuck out for you. But
it got very
I don't know
dark.
why.
It got very dark in my room since we started talking.
Yeah. We've summoned the spirits.
Yeah. It's funny.
Well, I'm glad. I'm so excited now to go check out the cover so I can see what my treat is for "The Flowers Are Still Standing." But I'm glad to know that I'm not the only person that loved that line, that it was something that came up
when you were saying that, I was like, oh man, I hope she doesn't say something I don't know. I'm going to feel so embarrassed.
Right. But that's such a good one.
That's a classic.
I love it. It's so Bill Murray too, like cocky.
He's like, whoa, nice shooting, Tex.
Yeah. Also good. Also good. Because there are so many, and you guys touch on it. I was so happy that you guys touched on, there's a song on the album called "I've Got a Dick," which anybody, it's true. Yes, it's true. This man has no dick. I mean, definitely, like, that whole joke and that whole bit. So I was happy to see it referenced. But again, I was so glad you guys didn't like lean into the literal too hard. Like, you took the nuggets and you made them their own. And that's what I think makes this album so magical, is that it really is a standalone companion piece. And if you love the movie, this is a great way to have like an extension of it that is brand new.
Yeah,
so thank you for that.
No, yeah, thank you. Thank you for having us. Thanks for us, the royal us.
I know. I'm like, you and the mouse in your pocket. That's what my grandma used to say.
Thank you. Thanks for listening and for enjoying the record. And it was a lot of fun to make, and it's been fun to get it out into the world.
Well, before we wrap up, do you have any, can you share any spoiler alerts? Do we know what's next? What's the next concept album?
I don't know. I mean, we've definitely talked about it a little bit, and we've definitely talked about how it'll definitely be a concept album. But we definitely don't have anything concrete. There's nothing. Okay. We don't have any songs at this time. But I imagine, I don't know. All
right.
I wish I had something to give you.
I'm going to get my wheels turning and see if I have, if I can put in special requests, or so. I'm just going to start bombing you guys with like all the movies that I want to see concept albums for.
Just send them to 1001 albumcomplaints@gmail.com.
Right. I'll see if I make it to the mailbag portion. I'm like, I know this is off topic, you guys, but
exactly.
It's Jenn again.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you so much for joining this week. I love a concept album, and this one is for sure worth checking out. Listeners, it is spooky season. So if you're waiting for an excuse to go out there and listen to Stay Puft, now is the time to do it. And you can find the album on Spotify, Bandcamp, or at thechopunlimited.com. And if you're not familiar with the 1001 Album Complaints podcast, you are missing out. It is one of my favorite shows. I was a fan long before I was invited to guest on the show. So definitely go find that wherever you stream your podcasts and on Patreon. And last but not least, please be sure to follow, download, and share the show. And if you love listening, drop a review on Apple or Spotify for us. It really does help. And I will be back next week with an all new episode. Until then, to stay informed on all things Super Awesome Mix and what are you listening to, be sure to follow us on Instagram at Super Awesome Mix. Thanks for listening, and please join me again next week to find your new favorite song.